What's up, everyone? I'm so glad that you're joining me this week. I'm your host, Ryan McCarty. We talk about everything people, culture, engagement. So this week, I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to Champion Your Culture.
What's up, George? How are you?
Good morning, my brother. I am doing great on this hump day, this Wednesday, midweek. We are halfway through the week. We're having a great week, maybe having a miserable week. Wherever you are, I'm glad that you are here with us this morning. And hopefully, as you're listening to this podcast, that it cheers you up, motivates you, inspires you to do good and move forward positive with the rest of your week. And so welcome to Champion Your Culture. We are sponsored by Culture of Good.
Yep.
And Ryan, man, how are you doing? How's it going over there in good old Indiana?
Well, well, it depends on if you're talking sports, weather. What are you wanting, man? I mean, sports, we're all over the place, man. I mean, it's like, we've Colts are failing really big. Our Pacers are looking amazing. Other than sports, weather's okay. Life's good, man. Life's good. We're just vamping up really like for the holidays as a family. We're getting ready for Christmas. We set up the tree yesterday. We've got, we've been deciding whether to get a new tree or not. We've had the same tree. It's starting to, you remember the tree you had when you was a kid, man, and you had tinsel all over it and you never got a new one. So after 15 years, it just looked like a bunch of tinsel everywhere,
It falls apart as we figure that out.
Oh God, yeah, man. I mean, it's impossible. The lights came on the tree; they don't work. So we refreshed our old tree this year, but thankfully we haven't used any tinsel or anything. I'm glad that's a thing of the past. I don't know. My daughter was saying tinsel's coming back. So if you're on the podcast today and you hear of somebody wanting to put tinsel on a tree, tell them to stop before it's too late.
Oh man, that is great. So speaking of Christmas tree, what is your family like? Everybody does different things. I've seen people put popcorn, around their Christmas tree. Of course, the traditional candy cane.
Oh no.
Like, is there an ornament that has to be on the tree that is your ornament?
Yeah, this is a great question, man, because ironically this year we took all the ornaments off for the first time. Like, I mean, forever, dude. Like, and we put all new lights on. We've got some ribbon on it. I wish I had a picture. It's really cool. But we went with the larger lights. So the bulbs are really big and really bright. But during the day, they're off. They look like ornaments. So it's kind of like clear ornaments. So it really worked, man. But yeah, so we have literally nothing and nothing on the top. How about you? What do you have on there?
It's a mixture. So, one of the ones that I have, every year we buy something different that's significant to us. So a few years back, I was into the whole getting into photography. I love nature, as you know. It's my peaceful place. If I was ever to escape, you'll find me in some woods, near a waterfall, wherever it may be, or even an ocean. And so I have a nice little camera ornament that goes on the tree every year.
Cool,
and so we try to find something different every year. We got a half body like elf, and so you just see the butt and the legs of the elf coming out of the tree. That's
nice.
That's like the funny. That's like you got a kid now, Dexter. And so something that keeps the family laughing, just something sarcastically, kind of a gag gift, so to speak. And so, that's what we get. We got a little bit of mixture of everything. Of course, the lights. What we did find out is that when we moved from Georgia, as you know, we moved last year to Nashville area, and our house in Georgia, had an open ceiling, so it was 25 feet up. And so the tree didn't really matter as far as the height. And so we had a huge, tall tree where we had to get a ladder to get to the top of it. And now we're in Nashville, smaller house, where the roof is like 8 or 9, or maybe 8 to 10 feet or something like that.
Right.
And so our tree was just kind of like, it was curled over. So we did a tree swap with with our best friends here, our family here. We're like, hey, you got an open ceiling. We don't. So we got a little smaller, thinner tree. It went on a diet compared to the tree we had before. So that is something new. We had to switch out. So,
I've done the whole live tree where it was like when you got it in the house, when you cut a tree down outside and you put it inside, you have no idea what it looks like inside. We cut one down outside and brought it inside, and it like took up the whole living room. It was so wide. Our girls were convinced raccoons were going to jump out of that thing at some point, man. I mean, it was like way, way, way too big, but hopefully everyone's having a good holiday season. I know this can be and both of us, I mean, George, this can be a real stressful time. I have my own stressors. There's a lot going on out there. And I just want to stop for a moment before we get into conversation about accountability. I just want to encourage everyone out there, you don't have to be perfect around the holidays. There's times that you're going to need to pause and take a break. And I think it's really important as leaders to do that and to really focus on our own mental health and our well-being. Self-awareness, recognizing that this can be a hard time for you because maybe a loss of a loved one around this time, or, George, I know you have that. And there's a lot of that, man. And I think it's just really important. The first thing that we talk about, and I guess this is kind of accountability, right? Because we talked about it last week, is like, you have to really be accountable to yourself, man. I mean, that's what accountability is, right? Like when you sign on to a job or you get hired, you get your roles and responsibilities. You don't get your roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities, right? Accountability is something that's set. It's an understanding. There's expectations that are set. But really when it comes to accountability, you have to do that for yourself. And I think one of the first things we want to focus on at Champion Your Culture is that you champion yourself first, right? You champion your own emotional state, right? Do I need a break? Do I need to take a walk? Do I need, someone to talk to? What do you need? Identifying what you need right now during the holidays is so important. And, I think, earlier when I had a younger family, it was so much stress trying to pull off presents and pull off trip to family and pull off this and that. And there's, we just have a lot going on in our lives. And I think, that is compounded by everything that's going on in business, because everyone's in, a lot of people are in budget season and looking at what does this next year look like. We're planning, we're getting strategy together. I love the idea, George, that culture is more than a program and really more than an initiative. But if we think about this coming year, I would imagine a lot of our listeners are having conversations around several different things: culture, engagement, connection. How are we going to connect, right? Do we stay remote? Do we keep with the hybrid? Do we go completely, in person in the office? How are we going to do that? All of those things are impacting culture. And what we do at Culture of Good, you mentioned it earlier, this podcast sponsored by Culture of Good. What we do is provide the training and development for culture and leadership, right? So if you're a leader in business and you're leading the culture, right? And that's why we have our training set up. And the podcast, obviously, when we want people to engage with us every week, we're on every Wednesday. But George, I want to dive into this idea of accountability, but I want us to recognize, like, as we're planning this next year, I want our listeners to understand we're on here, and that's wonderful. And this is great content. But if you want to get into strategy and planning and managing your culture and your leadership throughout this next year as a process, and you want to plan this out, we do that. We help with that. And so that's where I wanted to mention that, because as we're developing our ideas on culture and accountability, I think it's really important to understand that with all of our strategies that are set up, if we don't have a culture of accountability, it really doesn't matter what we set in place. Accountability really becomes the key of engagement, becomes the key of people loving each other. We talked about that, caring for one another, all of that. So what are your thoughts on the ideas around how to begin to establish this type of culture within a business?
I think, Ryan, whenever there's something that is being established, um, I always look at accountability um, from within, right? Like everything ultimately starts with me.
Yeah.
I cannot give, nor can I receive something that I don't first establish within the foundation of myself, right? And so
Mm.
you can have somebody teach you things, but until it is in you, it won't come out of you, and until it is in you, it won't be established as a foundation. That's why oftentimes if you see a person rejecting something that you know is a positive influence, it's because they don't understand and comprehend it, and it's not something that is in them. And so whenever there's something that has to be established, it must first become a foundation of my own beliefs, right? If it's the everybody else's fault mentality, especially accountability. It's the accountability for me is not seeing the negative as a fault. I used to say this: whenever I find fault in all I see, it must then find fault within me, right? And so if I'm finding fault with everything around me, it can't always be everyone else or everything else. And so if I find fault in all I see, I must then find fault within me. So what is it about me? And as you said in the beginning, Ryan, champion yourself, champion me, taking time for me. That also is in the accountability piece. How do I lay the foundation for what I desire as an outcome for others? I must first have that desire for myself. And so whenever we're establishing that, what does it look like for me? So then I can communicate to you what I believe accountability looks like. And then together we can then align the reality of both of our perspectives, right? Instead of, as a leader, lording the authority and saying, this is what accountability is going to look like in the workplace. And that settles it, right? Wherever there is a this is this and there's nothing else, it's my way. There's no highway options. And every highway I've jumped on, bro, has different exits.
Well, that's a problem, yo, because there are exits, and that's the reality that companies are coming to terms with, is like there's a lot of exits now, right? So if you try to build culture by demand, then people will exit, right? Like they're going to see another company over here and they may take a pay cut to have a better culture. I mean, I've worked with companies where I've built culture with them, where I've had people actually do that, have taken, I had one person, it was a GM that had taken a $50,000 pay cut to come back to work for us after they had left for a pay raise because of culture. Listen, and that's the reality when you're talking about going down the highway. Let's think about that. Let's think about accountability in that way of process, right? Like when you're driving down the highway, you're accountable for all kinds of things that are kind of baked into the culture of driving a car. You're accountable to the other cars in other lanes. If you start to go into a lane that you're not supposed to be in, what happens? You cause an accident, right? So we have accountability frameworks throughout our entire life. Earlier on as a kid, we learned stuff, if you don't brush your teeth will fall out. Right. But your mom and dad aren't going to be there every morning throughout your entire life. And if you're 35 and you still haven't started brushing your teeth yet, you're going to find out what lacking accountability does, right? So it's like we have to choose what kind of culture we want to have. Do we want our culture to have teeth? Do we want to drive down the highway and have a sense of there being a connection with our other drivers, a responsibility, personal responsibility for ourselves? We own our actions. That's what it means. We own our actions, right? That's accountability is I own my actions. I live it out. But where do those actions come from? And how do we do that? I want to pull up a picture, George, that we've seen a lot. It went viral. It was the Japanese soccer team, or football, if you're not in the US, their team after the World Cup match that they had, how they left the locker room. I don't know if you've been in a locker room lately, but my locker rooms in high school didn't look anything like this, right? I mean, this is immaculate, right? But also, and when we see this, this was being used as a picture of culture, accountability, right? I mean, when I think about this, I think about accountability, every person owning their space, owning what they do, their attitude toward the entire experience. We saw even their fans, which was really interesting, George. The fans after the game went through the seats and the stands and began picking up trash, and then you saw other fans beginning to follow their lead. Culture is contagious,
Yeah.
behavior is contagious, and it's more, you're, if you're a leader, you're the most contagious person in your business.
Yeah.
If you're a
Yeah.
leader, you're the most contagious person in your business.
And
Whatever
I would
you
say this,
do.
Ryan,
Yeah, keep going.
I'll add to this, because a lot of people don't realize that they are a leader, because leader is really about influencing others, right? In some way, form or fashion, you're influencing somebody. And leadership is not always tied to titles, right? Leadership could be you are the person that comes in and gives everybody energy. Your smile, you're always energetic, you're always
Right.
positive, and all of a sudden you're not positive. People notice that.
Yeah.
You're leading somebody, even if you don't realize it, and even if the title doesn't say and the pay doesn't say, hey, you're a leader, you influence people around you. So you have to be careful even on that platform as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so every single person in some way needs to set that example, because you are an influence.
Yeah.
And leadership certainly isn't title, but if someone gives you a title, with title comes greater, I believe, greater responsibility. I really believe that. I think every single person carries the responsibility in terms of how they keep themselves accountable, but their accountability, when we hear of someone that has been given authority by the organization, we have to assume that they were given that authority because they know how to use that authority to be able to lead well within the organization. So how they lead becomes the example of how everyone else becomes an influence and begins to impact everyone around them. So when we see this locker room, this is going to look different than this, right?
Yeah.
Now that doesn't look like the same pristine, perfect. I mean, you could almost like eat off of that other floor. I would clearly advise not to eat off of the floor we're looking at right now. However, I want to give a shout out to Wiley Metal in Marion, Indiana. Mike Wiley went through our training. And this is what we're going to have January 24th and 25th is our 2-day virtual training. George, listen, this is just as much, if not more, a picture of accountability, because a locker room was the result of. This right here is also the result of building a culture of accountability. That's what's happening in this picture, that if we were standing in this image, what we would be hearing is this gentleman with the hat on and the hoodie for the first time getting up in front of a group of people talking about the value that he cares most about within the organization that they began to roll out. And a lot of it's about being accountable and having purpose behind those values. And so I want to shout them out, because sometimes we don't see this being culture. We think culture is like Google or like something that's outside of the realm of what normal work looks like. No, culture is normal work, man. I mean, it's just the everyday stuff. But what is being built in this picture is something that is just as powerful as what you saw in that locker room. But a lot of times we don't really share these. We share the end result, but this is how you build culture. You build it by having conversations, by having, by coming together and having a sense of there being camaraderie and a connection among each other. When we think about accountability, most companies are wanting to build accountability because we want people to behave the way we want them to behave. And we're seeing accountability more as responsibility. Responsibility is a list of things we can say, but accountability, I mean, it's all over the place, man. Like when I was walking in this morning to work, and I'll let you talk, but I had a big box of hats. I collect old vintage hats, and I was going to share some with some of the employees. And I was carrying this big box. I had my backpack on. I got up to the door and I realized I couldn't get in the door. And right then someone that saw me in the building, ran down the hallway before I could get to the door. And as I was trying to fumble to get my phone, she opened up the door and said, "I got it." And I was like, I have been preaching this very example over and over. If you see someone carrying a box down the hallway and they're walking toward a door, accountability is you getting up from your chair and going and open up that door for that person.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really that it drives all the way to that, you know? I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it's what we talked about last week with the 5 C's. I know we want to talk about those again. But how does that align with common purpose? Yeah. Right. We have a common purpose. Number one, that we're going to serve each other, right? We're going to care, right? The 5 promises, one of the 5 promises is caring. I care enough about what Ryan has going on that I want to serve him and be there when he needs, right? And so it's having that everyone in the organization understands what we need, what our clients need, what our team needs, what our community needs. Everything is in alignment around how we should engage with each other. We should engage with our clients. We should engage with our community. It's that we have a common purpose thing. I go back to the Japanese team, right? From a sports mentality, their common purpose is aligned. You can see it because not one of those locker rooms has something left behind. The common purpose is that we're going to leave it better than what it may have been when we got there. And if it was great when we got there, we're going to make it even greater. How do we improve the environment around us? That's a common purpose, and it's clear and defined, and the patterns show it. And it's not just something that we have to do. It's something that we desire to do.
That's it. When it's common.
Yeah.
Well, the question that you asked is, how do we improve?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, let's start there. If we want to build a culture of accountability within a business, we can't say, okay, we're going to start a program called accountability in our business because we read a book, and we're going to start holding people accountable to KPIs, excuse me, and other things and numbers and blah, blah, blah. And we're building all this up. But we don't have a common, investment into that. Right. And so we're demanding that people behave a certain way. And that's not what we're talking about in this podcast. We're talking about championing people. You asked, well, how do we improve this environment? Well, a lot of times when we're asking those questions, we ask it in a vacuum with 5 people in a boardroom. How can we improve so that people can be more engaged? And then we turn to the HR people and we turn to this person. But when we're talking about common, where's the collective decision-making here within the business? Obviously, we can't make a collective decision on everything. But when we're talking about improving, because the only goals that are going to be really motivating to our employees are goals that first are self-directed, right? They're common. They understand they're a part of the development of those goals, right? They have input. We want input, so they're self-directed. And also that those goals are able to fit in and aligned with all the goals of our team members and other teams and so forth. And that's what we're looking at here is there has to be that common idea. I like the idea of saying there's no I in team. So why don't we change it to tweam? Right. So like your tweam, there is a we in team, man. I mean, like you got to get that. You have to say, this is what we do. Right. Because the goalie can't say I can't clean up my space. I'm the goalie. That's left up to the forwards. Right. Yeah. Like everyone collectively owns their shit. And then everybody collectively is rocking the shit. Right. Because we all collectively, each individually take ownership. So there's the question, right? Is like, how do we get people to take ownership? And that's the idea is we begin to have a conversation of how do we improve our culture? How do we improve our engagement? Actually talking to those that want to be engaged, asking them, how do we improve our accountability? Right. When we talk about one-on-ones, how do we improve our accountability as a one-on-one relationship? I mean, that's it, right? We talked about it last week. Relationships aren't built on trust, they're built on accountability. I don't have to trust you. I just have to know at the end of the day, you're going to be accountable to what you say. Now you can say that's trust, but I don't have to know every detail. I just have to know that at the end of the day that you're going to come back and say, this is what I did. This is how it happened. And then as a leader, I can say, this is great. How is it going? That's that coaching part. Is there anything that we can change and do differently the next time so that that can be done well? But if we can't fail in business, then what we're doing is we're setting ourselves up and our culture actually for failure.
Yeah.
Especially in this area of accountability, because we don't clearly know what in the hell are we supposed to be taking ownership of.
Yeah. You said there's no I in team, and the only thing that came into my mind is rest in peace Kobe Bryant, but at his memorial, Shaquille O'Neal, is famous. He had a lot of good teammates, won a lot of championships, but the most dominant duo, arguably in the NBA, was always the talks of Shaq and Kobe. And I remember Shaq telling the story about him and Kobe Bryant, and he's ball hogging, and the team was like, "Hey man, you got Shaq. Why don't you tell Kobe to pass the ball?" And Shaq went over and said, "There's no I in team, Kobe." And Kobe looked at him and said, "But there's a me in that mother."
Exactly.
And I share that because there is me in team.
Yeah.
And when it comes to accountability, you have to be accountable. I have to be accountable. Me have to be accountable so that I don't negatively influence the purpose and the direction of the culture of the team. And so I always think about that story whenever somebody says there's no I in team. I always say, but there is me, and you have to be accountable.
I love it.
Because that's ultimately if there's no accountability and what does that look like, the expectations are not clear and we're not aligned. It makes it difficult, man. It makes it very, very difficult.
Man, I love that. Yeah, I think, I love the idea that there's a me in team, because really there is an I in team.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality of it. A team is made up of individual members, and each one of those members, when taking the responsibility for what they do, really creates that positive outcome that we're looking for. When we think about building this culture, we only have a few more minutes. This is part 2. We really, I think it's really important that those that are listening in a practical sense, if you want to grab this 5 C's of accountability, we'll post that again today. I want us to start thinking about this with our team. I think a good first place to start is to take this 5 C's of accountability slide, sit down with our team and ask the question, how do we improve on this? What does this look like for us? Do we have a common purpose? Are there clear expectations? Ask the questions that are hard as a leader that you don't want to hear, because when you do that, you're going to have to be accountable to the realities that you're facing. And I'll tell you, man, I mean, if you want to know the culture of accountability in your business, you need to start by looking at what the CEO is accountable to and who the CEO is accountable to. Does everybody work for them, or do they work for everybody? Right? Do they have that sense that we're building accountability because we need people to do what we say, or do we want to do this because we want to collectively accomplish something as a whole, as one, right? And that unity, that vision, man, that vision and that clarity. So I think going through each one of these, even the how to, like getting those steps. Now, if you go through 1 and 2 and you say, okay, 3 is where we have some obstacles, reach out to us. George, tell them how our training can impact number 3 moving forward. I think it's really important.
I think the value is that number 1, simplicity. We keep everything simple, and then really allowing yourself to create a playbook that is specifically designed for you. So although everybody may be in different places and positions, and I think in our last cohort that we had 4 or 5 different people in 4 or 5 different spaces, and everything's still aligned with the training that we provide without having to skip and jump and make it personal for everyone. The steps in the process makes it simple so that wherever you are in your business, you don't have a culture, you don't have anything worked up, or maybe you do and you're already doing good in your community. these things all align from step one all the way to the end. And you walk away literally with a playbook that you can go back to the workplace and really implement from day one, how and where, and then be able to explain to whoever you need to explain to the why of this impact. And so I think the clear defined expectations that you get with the practical teachings and training and accountability, because one thing's for sure, if you're going to come and spend some time with us, we're going to hold you accountable to make sure that you get things done. Number one reason, because we don't want you to spend time with us and leave the same way you came. And we want to make you better. And then we want to make sure that when you leave, you say, man, that was actually worth it, versus, man, I didn't get anything out of it. You're going to get something out of it because we're going to hold you accountable. And there's a lot of value there. So
check this out though, before, and listen, sign up, go on cultureofgood.com and let us know. George, really quick though, I know we're out of time, but next week we have a special guest. I forgot to announce this, man.
Yeah. So we have one of our good friends, Joe Walsh. He is the Senior Vice President of People and Culture with the Arizona Diamondbacks, a good friend of ours. Man, we haven't really visually, done anything together since Arizona 2020. We were on the last flight before the shutdown of the pandemic, and we all survived. I'm excited to have Joe. He is filled with so much wisdom. We'll talk about a little bit about the good that he's doing and what they're doing over at the Arizona Diamondbacks. Some of the initiatives and things that their strategies that they're laying out, that's doing some positive things in their community, and really simplifying it to say you can do this too. Part of what Joe, our conversation is going to be about is about some of our training and what we provide, so that you can do some of the things that they're doing on your level. Not everybody has Arizona Diamondback money, right? But you can still do what you can do with what you have, the resources that you have, and we can train you on how to do that at our Culture of Good champion certification, January
24th and 25th. We got to get here. Actually, you don't have to get here. It's virtual. Yes, it's a few days. It's great. We've taken all the obstacles and challenges away and made it as simplified as possible. It's $9.99 to reserve your seat. It's $100. You can. I'll put some information out there. Be looking for that. You can go ahead and reserve your spot. You can do that on our website, and we'll see you January 24th and 25th. And before that, we'll be back next week with Joe Walsh with the Arizona Diamondbacks. We're excited, so excited about having him on. George, I love you, man.
Hey, I love you too, brother.
One time we're going to have to just get on here and chat about our kind of our experience together as we've grown. And, when we first met, and maybe what we can do is do some video on some of the neighborhoods that we grew up in together. Cause I feel like we kind of both grew up together, man, for a while. And I feel like it really is important for people to understand that's where our connection comes from, man. Yeah. It's genuine. So anyway, all right. I'm just rambling now. I'm just talking like you're my buddy, man. We're on a podcast. I'm sorry. Hey, I love you. I love everybody out there. We're going to see you back next week on Champion Your Culture.